Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of History and Whatever. This week, of course, Monday was Martin Luther King Day. And that, of course, is my subject today is actually not Martin Luther King's history, as though many of us know a little bit about Dr. King. My tradition every year is to listen to at least one of his speeches. And they're usually different, but I always find myself coming back to this speech. So what I'm going to do today is we're just going to kind of go over some of the things in my favorite speech by Dr. King. And it's a lesser known one, and it was right before he was, it's history. We all know that this happened before he was assassinated. And the speech that I'm talking about is called Unfulfilled Dreams. And if you haven't heard this speech, I would really encourage you to go and find it somewhere and either read the transcript. I would suggest reading the transcript. Listening to him speak is so much more powerful. Although the recording cuts out at the end, there's a little bit more on the transcript that I would suggest you go read. Either way, it's an amazingly fascinating speech. He's one of the greatest orators of our time. And I wanted to just highlight a little bit of this speech, because the tone is as if he knew his time was up. Like he got some sort of a message that his days were numbered, and he knew it. And of course, I'm just sort of conjecturing here. But if you go and you listen to this speech, I think you'd agree with me. So what he ends up talking about during this speech, he goes over a few different examples of ways that he's making his point. He starts off by quoting from the Old Testament about David and how he was to build a temple, but it wasn't to be completed. But it was good that it was within his heart that he wanted to build the temple. Now, I am not a religious man, okay? I'm not even a Christian. Now, I'm not an atheist, but I'm not a Christian. One thing I love about Dr. King's work is that he knew he was speaking to a broad audience, even when he was giving a sermon. Like, I'm sure that he understood that there were other people around who maybe weren't Christians. That doesn't matter. The point I'm getting at is that I love his work because of the fact that it's sort of universal. He speaks in sort of a language that's like a moral language. He even uses examples from other religions within this speech to try to move this point along. I am somebody who has spent most of my life trying to build one of these temples that he describes. And I'm quoting here. So many of us in life start out building temples. Temples of character, temples of justice, temples of peace. And so often we don't finish them. That's the game we play here. This man really was an extraordinary individual and one of my personal heroes from way back when. And you know, when I think about it, when I was in school learning about Martin Luther King, we learned about the Montgomery bus boycott. Rosa Parks was a part of that. We learned about the letter from Birmingham jail. We learned about the I Have a Dream speech, his most famous and prolific speech. Excellent speech. I've listened to that one many a time. But there were some things that they left out in school. You know, he had his life threatened over and over. There were bombs placed on the porch of his house. He never wavered from his nonviolent resolution. To look in the face of such violence, danger to yourself and your family and people who support you, and still not try to take up the sword and become vengeful. But he was in the same, he loved Mahatma Gandhi. He talked about Gandhi a lot. And he says it in this speech. Mahatma Gandhi labored for years and years for the independence of his people. And through a powerful nonviolent revolution, he was able to win that independence. For years, the Indian people had been dominated politically, exploited economically, segregated and humiliated by foreign powers, and Gandhi struggled against it. He struggled to unite his own people, and nothing was greater in his mind than to have India's one great, united country moving towards a higher destiny. This was his dream. But Gandhi had to face the fact that he was assassinated and died with a broken heart because a nation that he wanted to unite ended up being divided between India and Pakistan as a result of the conflict between the Hindus and the Muslims. That passage in this speech is so much better heard by the man himself. And I just wanted to, I want to bring this up and tell this to people so that they go and listen. He really had a very profound respect and admiration for Mahatma Gandhi. And he talks about the Apostle Paul, who, his dream was to go to Spain and preach the gospel in Spain, but he never made it. He never made it. He made it. He ended up in a jail cell in Rome. Another interesting point in this speech is that he kind of goes away from the Christian doctrine a little bit and talks about some of the other religions because he wants to make a point about the struggle between good and evil. In fact, here, I'll just read from the transcript here. Now let me bring out another point. Whenever you set out to build a creative temple, whatever it may be, you must face the fact that there is a tension at the heart of the universe between good and evil. It's there. Now, and he kind of goes over a few of these. Hinduism refers to this as the struggle between illusion and reality. Platonic philosophy used to refer to it as the tension between body and soul. Zoroastrianism, a religion of old, used to refer to it as a tension between the god of light and the god of darkness. Traditional Judaism and Christianity refers to it as a tension between God and Satan. Whatever you call it, there is a struggle in the universe between good and evil. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a member of any of those philosophies of God. However, what he's talking about is something that we can all very well relate to. To this day, this speech doesn't degrade whatsoever. This is absolutely relevant to us every day. I fight with the feelings of good and evil all the time. The God of light and the God of darkness are constantly at odds with each other, yin and yang. Yin and yang, however you pronounce that. And this was something so interesting because he goes into it a little bit more, and he talks about Sigmund Freud used to say that this is a tension between what he called the id and the superego. This just smacks of someone who has fought for so long on the side of light, keeping the darkness at bay. But he knows that his time is coming to an end. I don't know how many times I've listened to this speech, but I'm moved by it in a different way every time. And we end up having to cry out with Ovid, the Latin poet, "I see and approve the better things of life, but the evil things I do." And he's talking about Plato. We end up having to agree with Plato that the human personality is like a charioteer with two headstrong horses, each wanting to go in different directions. Or some, we even have to end up crying out with the St. Augustine, as he said in his Confessions, "Lord, make me pure, but not yet." We end up crying out with the Apostle Paul, "The good that I would I do not, and the evil that I would not that I do." We end up having to say with Jothi, "There's enough stuff in me to make both a gentleman and a rogue." I just love that he goes to different examples. He just doesn't pull from the Bible. He looks around and finds other things that create his argument and make it that much stronger. He's not just using Christian doctrine here. He's looking around. Plato, Ovid, the Latin poet. Just all this to get to there's a tension in human nature. In final analysis, what God requires is that your heart is right. He is simply saying, maybe you won't be able to do whatever it is you're after, but you want it. Is it really in your heart what you want? Is it good? And he goes on, like, I'm not reading this to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going through this speech and pointing out that there are so many different ways that he shows with good, thoughtful, positive morals, and he uses some excellent metaphors to really drive his point home. One is this metaphor of driving to Los Angeles on Highway 80. Well, it'll take you from Montgomery to Los Angeles as long as you're on the right road. If you're on Highway 78, that you're not on the right road. And here, I'll just go from here. Now, the terrible thing in life is to be trying to get to Los Angeles on Highway 78. That's when you're lost. That sheep was lost, not merely because he was doing something wrong in that parable, but he was on the wrong road. And he didn't even know where he was going. He became so involved in what he was doing, nibbling sweet grass, that he got on the wrong road. Salvation is being sure that you're on the right road. It is well. That's what I like about it, that it is within thine heart. To me, for some reason, that those lines where he's talking about going to Los Angeles on Highway 80. And actually, the line itself that he talks about here, he became so involved in what he was doing, nibbling sweet grass, that he got on the wrong road. What an excellent speaker he was to insert something like nibbling sweet grass. Because it's a wonderful metaphor for how so many of us, get carried away in some things that really don't matter. And you end up on the wrong road. You're going the wrong way. It's like I often say that sometimes kids, I think, get into danger and get into, bad situations in life because if you don't have a goal, if you don't know where you're going, you're just going to go anywhere. If you don't have a direction, you'll go in any direction. And any direction isn't necessarily good. I mean, you may not know that you want to go, you're not to LA, You may not know that you want to go to LA. So how could you get on Highway 80 if you don't even know where you're going? So, I mean, that's one thing that I wish I could tell kids coming out of high school is that, you don't have to go to college right away. I mean, some people, maybe that's the best thing for them. And I'm not saying you shouldn't either. But for me, I really hated high school and I liked college a lot. But the problem with me in college is I had absolutely no direction, no idea of where to go. So I just kind of went in whatever direction. And I jumped around a lot because nothing really resonated with me. And I had no direction. I was on Highway 78 trying to get to Los Angeles. The thing is I didn't even know where fucking Los Angeles was. I didn't know that I was going to Los Angeles. I was nibbling that sweet grass, I'll tell you that. But this is why it resonates with me so much. It's like you have such a Christian preacher giving these incredible speeches, working with everybody. They're trying to do the very best and make things better in the best way that he knew how. Indomitable will and strength. And, his faith was what guided him and what kept him moving. And he wholeheartedly believed in his cause. Sort of in the end here, he says, it's not exactly the end, but it's getting towards the end. And in the final analysis, God isn't going to judge him by that little separate mistake that he's making, because the bent of his life is right. And the question I want to raise this morning with you is your heart right? So let's ask ourselves that question. Is your heart right? Are you on the right road? I'd like to believe that my heart is in the right place. And that I will always be on the side of light. And do my best to keep the darkness at bay. Just to keep it from swallowing me. Like, I'm just a comedian, okay? I'm a comic. I'm here, I'm talking to you about this speech because it inspires me. It's something that I can't do. But it speaks so soundly to my soul that I wanted to bring at least pieces of it to you. And maybe you'll go listen to it, and hopefully, maybe you can fix up your heart. Or maybe you just kind of think about it a little bit and decide that, you want to go to LA. You got to get off Highway 78 and go find Highway 80. This is one of those things that resonates with me. He tried to be a good man. He tried to be a just man. He tried to be an honest man. His heart was in the right place. And I can hear a voice saying, crying out through the eternities, I accept you. You are a recipient of my grace because it was in your heart. And it is so well that it was within thine heart. So I may never accomplish anything great in my life. I may never help anyone. I may, get some people to laugh once in a while or enjoy the music that I write and play and try to just be a good person. And it is so well that it was within thine heart. And he takes time out of this speech to say that he's not a saint. He's a sinner, like all of God's children. And it's so prolific to me, so shattering, so shaking, so brave. I take you in and I bless you because you try. It is well that it was within thine heart. I take you in and I bless you because you try. Are we really trying? I'd like to think that I am, even though all I'm doing is sitting in my apartment talking into a microphone right now. And it's, Thursday. Martin Luther King Day was on Monday. Hey, but the podcast comes out on Thursday generally, so here we go. And I hope that you had a chance to celebrate. The life of a most brave and strong man. And he ends this speech that's not in the recorded version that I have, but there's a few more lines after it falls out. Right after, I take you in and I bless you because you try. It is well that it was within thine heart. What is in your heart this morning? If you get your heart right. For you can stand up amid the storm, and I say it to you out of experience this morning. Yes, I have seen the lightning flash. I've heard the thunder roll. I've felt the skin breakers dashing and trying to conquer my soul. But I heard the voice of Jesus saying, still to fight on. He promised never to leave me alone. No, never alone. No, never alone. He promised never to leave me alone. Never to leave me alone. The very last line, it's the last few lines, really. When you get this faith, you can walk with your feet solid on the ground and your head to the air, and you fear no man, and you fear nothing that comes before you, because you know that God is even in Crete. If you ascend to the heavens, God is there. If you descend to hell, God is even there. If you take the wings of the morning and fly out of the uttermost parts of the sea, even God is there. Everywhere we turn, we find him. We can never escape him. Look, I'm not... I am not a Christian. I do believe in some sort of God, but it's not anything that's organized, and I'm not trying to get anybody to believe in anything, okay? I just am continuously amazed at the strength of this man. And it really feels like he's just talking more about an idea, about something that he knows to be true in his heart, and he expresses it in these words of his Christian faith of God. And it doesn't really matter what you call that being or what your particular beliefs are. I think what he's saying here, everybody kind of can agree with. And of course, I mean, I'm no theologian. I'm not even a scholar. Let's be honest here. I'm just some dude. Who really loves Martin Luther King. This is actually from the middle. But I love this piece here because he's not using any sort of, religious overtones in this. He's just talking about something that we can all kind of agree with, which is psychology. Every time you set out to love, something keeps pulling on you, trying to get you to hate. Every time you set out to be kind and say nice things about people, something is pulling on you to be jealous and envious and to spread evil gossip about them. There's a civil war going on. There's a schizophrenia, as the psychologists or the psychiatrists would call it, going on within all of us. And there are times that all of us know somehow that there was a Mr. Hyde and a Dr. Jekyll in us. How incredibly striking would it be to be in the room? Now, I'm doing a very poor job of reading these parcels to you from this excellent speech delivered by one of the greatest orators the world has ever known. Or at least within recent memory that we can have, some sort of cognitive reasoning on because we have recordings in this time. There may have been others that were better, but I really doubt it. I don't know why we just give him one day. I think he should have the whole week. Or a whole month. The whole month of January. That should be Martin Luther King Month. Where we think about the struggles that he and his family and his community went through so that we could have the world that we have today. The little bit of justice, the little bit of civility, the little bit equality that he so righteously fought for. Never lifting a hand in anger. And speaking out against poverty and war. Of course, it was the war in Vietnam. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on the 15th of January, 1929. April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was shot and killed standing on a balcony in Memphis. He delivered this speech Sunday, March 3rd, 1968, at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. So that's like a month before he was murdered. So many of his other speeches get a lot of they get a lot of publicity. They get a lot of remembrance. They get a lot of credit. This is one I wish more people would go and listen to, and really listen to it. The strength in his voice is incredible. And his point is made so eloquently. Yet even somebody like me, who sort of has a disdain for organized religion in most of its forms. Not that I have anything against people who choose to worship in whatever way. Sometimes I have a problem with organized religion. It doesn't matter at all to me that this was a preacher saying these things. It doesn't change the way I feel about it at all. And all I want to do is help. I'm going to go back to telling dick jokes tomorrow, but I have listened to this speech easily 15 times, 20 times over the years. This is probably one that I choose most often on Martin Luther King Day to listen to, because it's so inspiring and so heartbreaking. What a good man he was. How hard he worked to become who he was and to stay nonviolent, even when great acts of violence were committed against him. That is superb victory. That, even Sun Tzu would agree. Sun Tzu, James. Again. This is Martin Luther King. Are you really bringing up Sun Tzu right now? Yes, I am. Chapter 3, Attack by Stratagem, Parable 2. Hence, to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. He did everything he could to break the enemy's resistance without fighting. Take a minute and go listen to this speech. You won't regret it. And it'll shake you to your core if you really give it the respect and focus and concentration that it deserves. I feel like I learn something new from it every time. Hey, all right. So, once again, hey, this has been history and whatever. This is a part of history. It's not a very funny part, but this podcast is kind of taking on a life of its own. And I really appreciate anyone who's taken the time to listen to this and, go and better yourself by listening to this speech. Unfulfilled Dreams by Dr. Martin Luther King. I think that anyone of any religion, of any background, even atheists, can get something from this speech. Anybody who believes in justice or equality or even just being a good person, I really think that this is something that is for you. So, hey, once again, this is James Manning III, and this has been history and whatever. Hey, send me an email, jm3e.pod@gmail.com. Tell me what you think, what I should do, if I need to correct myself, if I'm being dumb or, if I'm being smart. I'd rather hear about that. I know I'm dumb most of the time, and I don't think that reading from a speech is smart, but, I just hope that somebody gets their heart fixed up just a little bit by what this man said in 1968. Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next History and Whatever.